Germany has so far avoided the strict lockdown measures seen elsewhere, instead calling on its citizens to abide by social distancing rules. It's also put in place widespread testing for this new virus. And while the death toll from COVID-19 in Germany is currently below that of its European neighbours, France, Italy or Spain, to take a closer look at the situation there, we can speak now to Ulrike Guerot, a Professor of European Politics and the Study of Democracy at Danube University Krems, and also founder of the think tank, the European Democracy Lab. Ms. Guerot, thanks for your time. Firstly, Germany seems to have a very different management of this crisis than its neighbours, and also far fewer people there dying from COVID-19. What do you think that's down to?
Well, I mean, first we have very different regulations because we have also the Länder of Germany who are varying in their approaches. We have peaks of corona in Bavaria, in North Rhine-Westphalia, and in Baden-Württemberg in the lower southern part. But the rest of Germany, as you say, is still quiet or more quiet. We had more time to prepare, actually. Comparing with Italy, we had more days and weeks to prepare to increase hospital beds. So this is probably why we are a little bit less infected and could work on this flattening the curve, which was the motto which Germany took a couple of days ago.
OK, so more prepared, perhaps more resources. There also seems to be an awful lot more testing for this virus happening in Germany than elsewhere.
Well, testing is now happening. It increased since a couple of days. That was the question in the very beginning. But as you say, I think there's a question of resources and there's a question of time. And it has been anticipated because we were a little bit less surprised by the curve starting like in Italy and like in Spain. And I think this is what gave us precious time where we now are also, and that is the good European news in the whole thing, where we could basically take patients from other countries, from France, from Italy to some of the hospitals in Germany, as long as still we are below capacity.
Indeed, we have seen a number of French patients, notably from one of the clusters in the east of France, going to Germany to get treatment there. So that's, one very clear example of the sort of solidarity that we are seeing on an EU level. However, we've also seen quite a bit of division on that wider scale.
Yes, we do. I mean, it depends on which sort of area of policy field you look. In the sanitarian sort of crisis, I think things are getting better, be that with gloves and masks and sort of the whole sharing business, which, if we remember, in the early days of the crisis, we also had renationalization in Europe. Now, the real question is sort of about the economic consequences. There's a lot of talk about these corona bonds and about common lending after crisis to get over the huge debt situation in which all European countries will be finding in themselves. So there are various policy fields to be looked at.
Indeed, some people are saying that the test of solidarity in the EU now could really make or break the union.
Well, I think that is true. I mean, there are a lot of appeals now being published in newspapers by intellectuals and important people in France. In Le Monde today, there's a huge appeal for what I called corona bonds, which is this common debt instrument, which some economists are suggesting now. And indeed, I think it's a litmus test for Europe with respect to its solidarity, how we will go through the crisis. And it has many sort of levels and layers. The one level is the sanitarian and the health system working together, and the second are the political and the more economic question, which we will come to when the peak of the crisis is over. But we started this interview with the peaking of the crisis, and I think Germany is still before the peak. What people are saying here is that the peak in Germany, we are still increasing dramatically the infections. We are also increasing the deaths people in Germany, and I guess same is true that for France, that the peak of the crisis or the coronavirus in Germany is still to come in a couple of days.
Indeed, we're going to, as you say, have to wait for the peak of that crisis and then look at not just the economic fallout, but also perhaps the democratic one as well. Ms. Ulrike Guerot, for now, thanks indeed for your time. And we'll no doubt speak to you in the coming days or weeks to get a better idea of where things may lie.